Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the race recap of the 2020 Tuscan Grand Prix at Mugello. And it was quite an incident-packed race, to say the least. It saw a lot of action, a lot of big moments, and it was a fairly entertaining race to watch. So, let's go in to the race report, and there is a lot to cover. So, the start of the race, going into the first corner, it was Valtteri Bottas got the better launch. Lewis Hamilton did not get a very good launch, but he was able to get into the slipstream, which enabled him to fend off the cars behind. But Charles Leclerc got the best start out of anyone, and he got up to third. However, Max Verstappen, he had problems on the grid, and Red Bull thought that they had sorted it, but he just went backwards at the start of the race, and then he was absolutely swamped going into the first corner. And then going into the second corner, he was hit by Kimi Räikkönen, who had made contact with Gasly, who was sandwiched between himself and Grosjean. Both Verstappen and Gasly were out of the race on the spot. Romain Grosjean went into the barrier, but somehow he was actually able to continue. And he was able to continue on his way. But Max Verstappen was out. Real shame for him, as it looked like he could play a factor in the race, considering Red Bull looked to be very close to, a lot closer to Mercedes. And Pierre Gasly, and an interesting stat that David Croft mentioned, that the last two French drivers to have won a race ended up being taken out on the first lap at the next event. But that happened to Olivier Panis in 1996, and it has now happened to Pierre Gasly in 2020. Verstappen was out of the race. The safety car was deployed, unsurprisingly. But on the restart, what happened? 4 cars taken out. Giovinazzi, Latifi, Grosjean and Sainz were taken out. And it was a kind of an IndyCar style incident. We see this sort of incident in IndyCar sometimes, where a couple of drivers jump a bit at the back, jump a bit too early, which catches out the drivers behind. This happens in IndyCar. It's rare to happen in Formula 1. But I mean, there are a lot of safety car restarts in the support series that did not have this problem, but so it was weird that there was this issue, but it could have been a very big crash. Like you saw from Giovinazzi's on board, he could have gone flying. And one thing I think helped in this incident is the lower noses, because it meant that rather than going flying, the cars kind of submarined under each other rather than over, which may have contributed to all the cars remaining on the ground. But unsurprisingly, this brought out with 4 stricken cars on the main straight and a lot of debris as well, the red flag was deployed. Absolutely no surprise, and that meant for the second week running, we had a standing restart mid-race. And Lewis Hamilton took full advantage and was able to pass Valtteri Bottas going into the first corner, whilst Alex Albon dropped back, and it looks like his podium chances were slim at that point. As the race was starting to settle down, the big interest was Daniel Ricciardo making progress, first passing Sergio Perez, and just ahead you saw Lance Stroll getting past Charles Leclerc, before eventually Ricciardo and Perez managed to get past Leclerc. The Ferrari had absolutely no pace in this race. And then there was the second round of pit stops, and the main interest after the second round of pit stops was the battle for third place between Ricciardo, Stroll and Albon. Ricciardo had managed to undercut Stroll in the pit stops in the end, and looked on for his first podium. But then Lance Stroll appeared to have some sort of a left rear failure going into the second Arrabbiata corner, which sent him into the wall at high speed. I mean, actually, the impact in the end wasn't too fast in the end, because he'd scrubbed off a lot of speed by the time he hit the wall. But somehow, I'm not really sure why this was, but they'll probably explain the reason why later. The red flag was deployed once again, and we had another standing restart in the middle of the race, which saw Daniel Ricciardo get the jump on Valtteri Bottas and take second place before Bottas, unsurprisingly, quickly managed to dispose of the Renault. Whilst Alex Albon was on a charge, he managed to get past Lance Stroll going into the first, or not Lance Stroll, Sergio Perez going into the first corner. Perez had managed to get the jump on Albon. Albon was dreading this restart, considering the Red Bull's struggles off the line. And then Alex Albon managed to get round the outside of Daniel Ricciardo. A very feisty move around the outside of the Renault to take third place. Towards the end of the race, the main interest was, can George Russell get back to the points? He was running in ninth for most of the race, but after the final red flag, he did not get the start he needed, and then that put him down into last. He then managed to get past Romain Grosjean, who had absolutely no pace, and was really putting Sebastian Vettel under pressure. And also, you had Kimi Raikkonen ahead, having a 5-second time penalty, looking like he might drop behind Russell. But at the front, it was Lewis Hamilton who took the race victory, taking another win, his 90th career win. He's now just one off Michael Schumacher's record. He finished ahead of Valtteri Bottas in second. Alex Albon finished in third, taking his first career podium. Finally, a much-needed result for the Red Bull driver. Daniel Ricciardo would have been disappointed to just miss out on the podium. He said on the radio he wanted to finish what he started, but he wasn't able to do that. Then you had Sergio Perez in 5th, Lando Norris in 6th, Danny Kvyat in 7th, Charles Leclerc in 8th, Kimi Raikkonen in 9th, with Sebastian Vettel rounding out the points. George Russell would have been gutted to just miss out on the points. He missed out just because of, he said that final red flag did cost him the points, with Romain Grosjean as the last of the finishers. And then the retirements, we had 8 retirements. We had Stroll, Ocon, who had a brake failure just before the red flag, and they were unable to fix it. Then you had Latifi, Magnussen, Giovinazzi, Sainz, Verstappen, and Gasly retiring from the race. So that is the race result. And now going through the drivers' standings going into this race. It hasn't been typed up yet. That will be typed up before the midweek show on Thursday. But in the drivers' standings at the moment, it's Lewis Hamilton who now has an even bigger lead in the drivers' standings. His lead is up to 55 points back to Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen is now 25 points behind Valtteri Bottas in third. He is now starting to think his title chances are over after 2 DNFs in a row. Whilst Lando Norris is currently in fourth. Alex Albon's podium has moved him up to 5th, ahead of Lance Stroll in 6th after his retirement. Then in 7th you have Daniel Ricciardo, who's moved ahead of Charles Leclerc, who's now dropped down to 8th. Sergio Perez is in 9th, back in the top 10, with Pierre Gasly rounding out the top 10, dropping a couple of places because of his retirement. Carlos Sainz is outside the top 10 again. Other than his second place in Monza, it's not been a good season for him. Then you have Ocon, Vettel, Kvyat, Hülkenberg. Raikkonen gets his first points of the season to finish in 16th place. He's now in 16th in the standings, level on points with his teammate Giovinazzi. Then you have Magnussen with the 2 Williams and Grosjean as the only drivers yet to score points. So now I am going to briefly talk about the Junior Series races that happened. As I said before, I'll be reviewing them extensively tomorrow, but I'm going to briefly talk about them now, just as a roundup as to what happened in today's action. And the Formula 2 race saw another exciting race this weekend. It's been a thrilling season in Formula 2, but Christian Lundgaard utterly dominated proceedings in today's race. He managed to get the lead at the start and did not look back in the end, and he eventually won the race ahead of Louis Delatres in second. Jurjevic felt like he could have won had he not messed up the start. Ahead of Mick Schumacher in fourth place, who extends his championship lead. In fifth place, you have Guan Yu Zhou, who did a great job to fight his way from the back of the field to fifth place in a sprint race. I believe he started around 19th and then got up to fifth. I believe Guan Yu Zhou is the best on the grid at fighting his way through the field. Then in sixth place, you had Callum Ilott, who had a difficult weekend at this circuit. Then you had Jehan Daruvala in seventh. And Marino Sato picks up his maiden point in Formula 2. What could have been for Robert Schwartzman had his gearbox not seized. He drove considerably well, considering that he started dead last. Despite a mistake at the end, he finished in ninth. But obviously, from starting from dead last, it was going to be hard to get into the points. And then in 10th place, you had Roy Nissany. So in the Artem Markelov start, other drivers of note, Artem Markelov started from reverse grid pole, but he had an incident with one of the high-tech cars, which resulted in his front wing getting damaged and him having to pit. Whilst there was an interesting incident that happened between the two high-techs at the first corner, where they made contact, which took Giotto out of the race. But in the driver's standings, Mick Schumacher leads by 8 points back to Callum Ilott in second. Christian Lundgaard has moved back up into third, who's now 8 points behind Callum Ilott, 5 points ahead of Robert Schwartzman in fourth. In fifth place, you have Nikita Mazepin. He's made gains in this race. He did not finish in the points after, I believe they pitted him after that contact. Sixth place, it's Yuki Tsunoda. He had a tough weekend. Ahead of Louis Delatres. Guan Yu Zhou is in eighth after another weekend of bad luck, but he still managed to get some good points. Ahead of Luka Giotto and Felipe Drugovich, rounding out the top 10. And then the morning started with the Formula 3 race, where we had a title decided. And whilst it was Liam Lawson that won the race, it was Oscar Piastri who took title glory. After Logan Sargent was taken out on the first lap. However, it wasn't all done at that point, as Théo Pourchaire, who was 9 points behind, gave it a good go and was almost just one place off securing it. I mean, Piastri managed to get past Fernandez in the end, but he could not quite make it. He gave it a really good go and he moved up into second in the standings in the end. But it was Liam Lawson that won the race ahead of David Beckman. Théo Pourchaire, he managed to work his way up into third ahead of Enzo Fittipaldi in fourth. Richard Verschoor finished in fifth. Jake Hughes finished in sixth. Ahead of Oscar Piastri, his seventh place was enough to secure the title. Congratulations to him. Great effort from him all round. In eighth place, you had Sebastian Fernandez, with Frederick Vesti and Alexander Smolia rounding out the top 10. The only two retirements, it was contact between Sargent and Zendelli that took them both out of the race and ended Sargent's title charge. But in the final championship standings, I will be going over them a bit more extensively tomorrow. It was Oscar Piastri who won the championship by 3 points in the end, back to Théo Pourchaire in second place. In third place, it was Logan Sargent in the standings. Still, he can be very proud of his efforts. And Frederick Vest, who had a really solid end to the season. Liam Lawson finished in 5th in the standings. And Beckman, Hughes, Sendelli, Verschoor and Peroni. So, in reverse constructors order, I'm going to be going through. I'm going to be doing a team by team review of today's Tuscan Grand Prix. Unfortunately, they still sit bottom of the table. Had Russell managed to score that point, the more 11th places would actually have put Williams ahead of Haas in the standings due to the countback. So it was a missed opportunity for Williams in the end. They'll be very disappointed with that. But still a really good effort from George Russell. No pace at all. Romain Grosjean somehow continued after his first lap incident, but he in the end finished last out of the finishers and actually quite a way off the rest of the pack. Whilst Kevin Magnussen was taken out after that first corner crash. Well, not that restart crash. Their second point score of the season, which puts them on 4 points. They've had 1 point finish with Giovinazzi and 1 point finish with Raikkonen, who managed to pull away from Vettel. He lost his time penalty, lost him the position to Leclerc, but he was able to stay ahead of Vettel, which kept him in the points, which kept him in 9th place. Danny Kvyat's best result of the season, finishing in 7th place. But Pierre Gasly would have been very disappointed to retire on the first lap, as it would have been very interesting to see how high he could have got up had he not been taken out on the first lap. There was not really anything anyone could have done, but AlphaTauri are actually starting to close on Ferrari in the constructors' standings. It may have been their 1,000th race, but it was not one to remember at all for Ferrari. 8th and 10th, showing really lacking race pace, being outpaced by an AlphaTauri, and the Williams was able to keep up with them. Just a very, very poor race pace for Ferrari in general. What is going on? Good result for Renault, but just missing out on the podium, finishing in 4th place courtesy of Daniel Ricciardo, who really wanted to send it towards the end of the race, but he was not able to repel the attacks from Alex Albon. They are at Racing Point are now starting to drop into the clutches of Renault. They lost a lot of points as a result of Lance Stroll going off into the barrier at the Arrabbiata corner, which obviously lost the team some points. But they still maintain 4th in the constructors. Sergio Perez still got 10 points for the team. But it's not really been the season that they've hoped for so far, I think it can be said. A 6th place for Lando Norris, which I'm pretty sure he'll be quite happy with, considering McLaren did not have much pace this weekend compared to usual. But Carlos Sainz would have been disappointed to retire early on in the race. He was spun on the first lap, and then he was caught up in that crash on the restart, which put him out of the race. But McLaren still maintained 3rd in the constructors' standings. Mixed day for Red Bull. Obviously, Max Verstappen would have been very disappointed to be out of the race on the first lap. But Alex Albon taking his maiden podium, and I think this was a result he needed badly. After all the speculation, and someone whose people are speculating could take his seat, taking a victory in an AlphaTauri last week, he needed to finally break that duck and get the monkey off his back and get that podium, and he finally has. And could this increase Alex Albon's confidence going forward? Now we know that he can do it. But once again, dominant Mercedes. They exchanged the leads throughout the red. It was Valtteri Bottas who initially led, but Lewis Hamilton took the lead back on the first of the red flag restarts and did not look back, taking the victory and also taking fastest lap as well. An incredible result once again for Lewis Hamilton, his 90th race win. Valtteri Bottas could not respond. He finished in 2nd place, and he will be quite bummed that he could not repel his teammate. But that is it from the Sunday review here on RaceWeek. Join us tomorrow where I will be reviewing the Road to F1, where I'll be reviewing the F2 and the F3 races. And also stay tuned for more content on this channel outside of the RaceWeek reviews, where I will be reviewing I'll be predicting the 2021 driver lineup after all these movements. I will be predicting what the 2021 lineup could look like in the next week. So stay tuned for that. And also stay tuned for a Formula 3 season review, which will be published on this channel in due course. And also on the week of the Russian Grand Prix, the RaceWeek website will be launched. So stay tuned for that. There'll be blog posts there, as well as the videos being published there, and much, much more. There's a lot of content planned for RaceWeek going forward. So make sure you leave a like, comment and subscribe to this channel for more content. And as far as the live shows are concerned, we will see you tomorrow for the Road to F1 review, and we'll see you on Thursday for the midweek show. Goodbye.